Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I am your host, Catryn Becker. In this podcast, we talk to all sorts of kind of people because we believe that while a smart person learns from their mistakes, a genius learns from others. So we're bringing in business owners, corporate executives, real estate investors from all different types of industry and all different walks of life so they can share what they've learned in their industry in order to help us either avoid those mistakes or to fail faster. My guest today is the founder of a great organization and something you probably have never thought about before, which is why I'm really excited to dig into this. But he founded something called the Rocky Mountain Physician Agency, and it's where he helps physicians to negotiate the best contracts and deals and to really get the most out of what they have learned and the incredible value that they provide to all of us in the society. So Ethan Nkana, welcome to the show.
Catryn, thanks so much for having me. I'm first stoked to be here with you. But, to echo your opening, I will have a plethora of mistakes that people can learn from. So I'm excited to get started.
Well, okay, let's just start off from the beginning that I didn't even realize this was a problem that needed to be solved. And I guess for someone who's not in the healthcare field, I know that there's kind of this illusion, or at least perception maybe, and perception is reality, that doctors make a ton of money, that I wouldn't realize that this would be a service that is necessary. So I'd love to hear how you came to found your agency and what was kind of the steps leading up to it.
Great question, Catryn. And just to maybe set the context, because I think you bring up a question that many people have in relation to doctors. We see them, they make all this money, they drive these cars, have nice homes. Why would they need an agent to negotiate their deal? And I would respond to that question first with the question, well, then why do athletes need agents, right? Athletes make far more money than doctors, and they have agents negotiate their deal. But really the more thoughtful and thorough answer is, if you look at the experience of doctors, their path and journey mirrors athletes. They spend 20, 25 years becoming elite at their skill set. And then when they go pro, for doctors that's finishing residency or fellowship, nobody along that journey has helped them understand what is in your employment contract, what should be in your employment contract, and what should you be paid for all of the hard work that you've done over the last 20 years in training. The additional consideration is that doctors, unlike most people, have six figures in student loan debt because of all of that training. And so when they come out, yes, they make $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, but many of them have $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in education loan debt that can take over a decade to pay off. Now, to be sure, the comparison is not between doctors and everyone else. It's between doctors and doctors. And so my goal is to make sure that physicians are paid what they should be for their skill set within their specialty without acknowledgement for gender or race. And unfortunately, those things do come into play.
I'm so glad you ended with the gender or the race, because that was the first thing that popped into my head. Like, it's so common to hear about gender pay gaps. My background is in engineering, so I know for sure, I was in a very male dominated field, and I know that I was not paid the same as my male counterparts. So how does that come into play in terms of doctors? Because it's not something that I realized was a problem.
I take that a little more personally than I think someone who were more interested in an academic sense might, because my mom is a doctor. And so when I am working on behalf of physicians, I see it as a way to honor my mom's legacy as a physician. And one of the things that she told me really early on, Catryn, was, Ethan, you need to pay special attention to women physicians, because we have challenges that other physicians don't have to deal with. And you're spot on, Catryn. The data bears it out, and I do a ton of research on this, provide a lot of resources on my website. But women physicians earn about 30% less than their male counterparts on average. And because doctors make so much money, that can be anywhere between $60,000 and $100,000 on an annual basis.
Yikes.
Yeah, these are big numbers, no matter how much money you make.
A huge chunk of America lives off of.
And I think the other thing is, a matter of principle. Why would I want to be paid less than my counterpart for doing the same work for something that has nothing to do with the quality of our work?
Yeah.
And I think any of us, you as an engineer, me in my past life as a corporate executive, I think we would all feel slighted knowing that our colleagues were making more money for the exact same work. And
Yeah.
it's no different for doctors. And so my job first is as a teacher to help doctors become aware of the disparities that exist and how they can counteract that in their contract discussions. And then for the doctors who want to work with me, I serve as a guide to help them get to their destination of being paid what they deserve in a job that's fulfilling.
And, it's definitely not a skill set that comes with all of the training that they've gotten. They've had such specific training for so long to get down to that field that they're in. And, I have an MBA and we only had like one day, not even a full course of negotiation. But it was a topic that was talked within another class, but still like that was it. So it's interesting how negotiations aren't really taught so much within the school system. And I can't imagine that it's something that's part of the curriculum for a doctor.
You're spot on. And I think another layer that affects people is the emotional side of it. I think we're naturally uncomfortable with the idea of a confrontation in a negotiation. So the thing that I remind doctors of very often is doctors are phenomenal negotiators. My doctor did it with me earlier this week. I went to go see my primary care doc. I said, I want to get off my heartworm medication. I want to get off my blood pressure medication. And she said, okay, if you want to do that, Ethan, here's some lifestyle changes that you need to make. So we agreed. We did some negotiation, right? And my doctor is getting me to do some things in my lifestyle that I don't want to do. But she knows that in order for me to get the benefit of it, she's going to have to guide me with some skills to achieve that. And the very same thing happens with doctors in contract negotiations, except that it's a different context. And so this is where I come in. And the reason that I'm the person to do this is because I spent a decade and a half working in hospitals. I wanted to follow my mom's footsteps, be a doctor, but I wasn't smart enough. So I went.
It wasn't your career path.
It wasn't my career path.
Obviously, you're very intelligent, just not intelligent in that way.
Yes, not intelligent in that way. And I think the cool thing is like I just have a ton of admiration for doctors and how they're just always the smartest person in every room. And so my pathway was go to law school, get an MBA, spend a decade working in hospitals. And it turned out that my skill set is better used on this side of the table, helping doctors understand how to get what they're looking for. How should I approach my employer? What does actual leverage look like in a negotiation? And how should I approach my employer in a way that's going to, one, maximize my time, which is valuable, and two, get me closer to the results I'm looking for, which for me, that means helping my doctors make more money.
So in the episode just before this one, I talked with a orthopedic surgeon. His name is Dimitri Thomas. The title of the episode is The Anatomy of Burnout. And he and I talked in quite a lot of depth, actually, about the skill set differences between healthcare administration and healthcare doctors, and how often the administration is making decisions with, or maybe an absence of speaking with the doctors and what they need. Is that something that you experienced when you were on, the other side of the table, as it were?
Certainly. And shout out to Dr. Thomas for talking about that. One of the things that I've often believed, and I believe it even more now that I've left hospitals, when I worked in hospitals, I thought that doctors walked on water. We just have such admiration for them. You can almost see their aura as they walk down the hall. And I had trouble reconciling that with my growing up with my mom, someone who I super close with. We get along really well, but I never saw this, this aura around her. And what I realized is there is this stigma in healthcare that hospitals exist and doctors are a coincidence to that. And the reality of it is that doctors are the primary revenue generators for hospitals. So it's quite literally, if there are no doctors, there is no hospitals. But I think that, and I think Dr. Thomas would probably echo this as well, physician burnout has in part been caused by the corporatization of medicine, taking more and more and more from doctors, asking them to give more while not having them as a partner at the table.
Yeah.
And many of the doctors that I talk with, money is not even their top concern. The top concern is, Ethan, I need adequate clinical support for my patients. I need administrative support in my office. I want to have a seat at the table for decisions that get made that impact my practice and my patients. But, like you said, Catryn, I think that there has been this trend over the last 10 to 15 years where we see doctors becoming less and less involved in the decision making in healthcare. And it's more people like me, the suits, who were the ones making decisions on behalf of doctors.
I mean, I obviously did not go into the medical field, but I just cannot imagine working and going to school for that long, paying as much money as you do for the opportunity to go to school for that long, and then to not get fair compensation as a result. So it's a great service that you provide. And I know that we spoke in the pre-interview that you've had this business for 3 years, which we're filming this in, the summer of 2023, and we all know what happened in the year of 2020. So I can't help but wonder, was COVID a catalyst for you to start this business?
Yeah, I don't know on the scale of dumb decisions I've made. I don't know where this one ranks, but it's up there. Starting a business in the middle of the pandemic is definitely up there. But it wasn't really a choice that I had. And I know that doesn't make sense on its face, so I'll just explain. The ugly of my experience was I got laid off from a job. I've been with this organization for 6 years, progressively growing leadership, and then got pulled into HR on a Friday afternoon, and they said, "Hey, bud, you're out of here."
Oh, wow.
That was 2019, and it was the lowest point in my career. And it was almost immediately after that I had this question spark of like, why don't doctors have agents like athletes? And I couldn't shake that. And I called my mom and I asked her, and we dialogued about it. And it ultimately became such a obsession of mine that in the year leading up to the pandemic, so 2019, I was doing all of the planning. And then by July of 2020, things had gotten to the place where I wanted to share it with the world. And so not long after that, in November of 2020, I quit my 6-figure corporate job and went out on my own. And just to compound how dumb this decision was, I quit my job in November of 2020. If I would have stayed until March of 2021, I would have gotten a $15,000 bonus. But I was so miserable in my job and so obsessed with RMPA that I had to just go. And I talked to my partner about it, and I shared with her what the situation was and the money that I had. And she said, let's give it 6 months. And if you can find a way to make it work in 6 months, then awesome. But if not, you can go back and find a job.
Yeah.
And
you'll have those other skill sets.
Exactly. And so I was just fortunate that it worked out where I got paid within the first 6 months of launching the business. But it was the scariest time in my life, starting a business and having no clue whether or not anyone would take me seriously.
And, some of the things that have come up through doing these various interviews is around the concept of for some of us, it takes a bit of time to even figure out what that thing is. It's more of like, I know I need to change. I know there's something else out there for me. And for me and for some others, we kind of leapt and just hoped the net would appear. But it sounds like it was a real blessing that you had such conviction and you had already been thinking about it for so long before you actually leapt. So you did create that net in a little form or fashion.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, but it felt completely unpredictable. And it was one of those situations where I felt like a fraud saying, hey, I'm this physician agent. Wait, you're an attorney? No, 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 I'm an agent. Uh, what is that? And are you a recruiter? No, it's an agent. So there were so many months where I cried more than I had in previous years in just that first year because I took so much of it so personally.
Yeah.
There was no distinction between myself and the business. It was super hard. And I hope that the people who are listening to this find some encouragement from it, because there were times where like I would call my wife and say, like, I can't take another unanswered email today. I can't take another rejection today. Like, I got to put it down. And I'm just grateful that she was supportive through that. But if anyone's listening to this and experiencing something like that, I hope there's some encouragement to be found.
And, there's some correlations to what you're saying. You're talking about sports figures having agents, but it's the same for people that are actors, right? They also have agents. And the similarity I see there is how many times actors hear the word no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's so much rejection that comes with so much of professions, of starting a business, of moving forward. And it is very easy to take it personally and to have it mean something about our own self-worth. So how did you get through that?
I'm really glad you asked that specific question, because as you mentioned, the rejection, I was thinking back to like those first few months starting out, and I read a lot of books and none of them were about business.
Mm-hmm.
I read a ton of Brene Brown at that time.
Love her.
Yeah, I read a ton of Brene Brown, Braving the Wilderness. I read this book called Rejection Proof by Jia Zhang. And I read a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Mm.
And the lesson that I took away reading those books was, if I can just keep going long enough to see it work, it will work. And I think entrepreneurs have this really weird kind of like unhinged perspective on what they think is possible. And I had that. Like, I had this belief that doctors should have agents just like athletes. And if I can just stay focused on what the goal is for long enough, I'll get there. And so there really wasn't a singular moment that I knew I would make it. Even now, I don't know if I'll make it, but I do know now that there's a recipe for seeing results. Mm. And the thing that changed for me is I was really good at like working really hard, really fast. But what I wasn't as good at is sustained effort. And that's the thing that I think has been the difference between my business being 3+ years old and some of the businesses that I've seen open and close since I've been in business. It's, are you willing to do those little things, as crummy as they feel and as little recognition as you get for them? Are you willing to do those little things every day, even when you don't see the results?
It's almost like this razor edge between insanity on one side and persistence on the other side.
And like, it is razor thin.
We all say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Yes. And it's like, but what's persistence?
Yeah.
It's not giving up. It's still doing those same things, but it's how we tweak it and how we, insanity would be sending an email to the same person over and over and over and over and over again. Or maybe not, because then maybe at some point they'd be like, oh my gosh, stop emailing me. I will talk to you. And then boom, that client could change your life.
The one thing that I will say is the key to my ability to like have this conversation with you 3 years in is the team that I keep around me. So first and foremost, my wife, obviously, she was with me when I started this and has seen the pits of what it has been and also now how it's growing. But I also hired a business coach. I have a therapist. I have a personal trainer. And that is because my belief is that I can see the world kind of like through a straw, right? And I want to keep people around me who are experts at what they do to make sure that I'm not succumbing to any blind spots. So whether it's mental health, physical health, or just business acumen, I keep people around me to help me stay encouraged because yeah, it's super hard. And I don't think anyone is built to do it on your own.
And no, I mean, um, humans, we need one another.
Mm-hmm.
We like to think that we can do it alone. There's a TV show on history that's called Alone. And
Mm.
it's where these people get dropped out in the Canadian wilderness and they have their own cameras to film everything. There's no film crew, there's nothing. They're literally alone. And I think the longest that anyone's lasted before they've tapped out was like 100 days, but that's not typical. Most of the time
Oh my God.
it's
Wow.
between like the very first season, 5 out of the 10 people tapped out within the first week.
Yeah, that would be me.
And everyone said, they're like, I didn't realize how good my family was or the people around me or how great my life was until all of the noise and distractions of our world is taken away. And it just really highlights how much we can support one another. But thinking about in terms of team, are you thinking towards growth and how you will scale your business?
Yeah, that's the fun challenge that I am working on right now as we speak. So my business coach and I are working on putting processes in place for my business and helping me transition from a business owner to a CEO.
Mm.
And so it's a really fun time for me because I'm getting to think about my business differently. I'm getting to think about how I spend my time differently. So first and foremost, what I did last month is I just brought on an assistant half-time. And so that person is taking on some of the administrative burden and tasks for the business that have to get done, but don't necessarily need me to do them.
Yeah.
And I just got off the phone before our call with an attorney who I'm looking at a partnership with for her to do all of our contract reviews. So kind of under the umbrella of RMPA, could we have an attorney who is helping do the contract reviews instead of having me do all of them? So right now I'm kind of in this strategic brainstorming phase of figuring out what scaling looks like and who I need to bring on the team in order to execute that.
Because I feel like in the, evolution of the entrepreneur, the first part is figuring out what you don't know, which is, I feel like the whole journey is figuring out what you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. But once you get to that point where it's starting to scale, that brings up like a whole new level of issues that you haven't really dealt with before and a whole different skill set to scale. That's hard to say a couple times fast.
Yeah, skill set to scale.
So
Can I share us just a quick story with
of course.
So as I mentioned, I brought on an assistant and my thought was, cool, I'll have them do all my social media, some administrative stuff. And so I hired this company that helps provide virtual assistants for you. And then you have a dedicated virtual assistant. And so I, created this list of tasks and we sat down and I talked through, we said, okay, here's the things that I need you to do. And here's how often I need you to do them. And she said, wait, but how do you do that? And in my head, I was like, oh, I don't have a process for how you do that because I just do it. And so the last month has been a really interesting exercise in trying to document all of these things that I just have in my brain as far as like what I need to do for my business. And as you scale, I think the thing I learned is that you have to have processes. You can't just kind of keep winging it because ultimately I've got to be able to pull myself out of the work. And the way to do that is with having established processes. So for someone who is getting ready to scale, I can say that is something you should be thinking about sooner than later.
Because it's the difference between working in your business and working on your business.
Yes.
You know, just creating a job for yourself and saying, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. No. You need to be able to to
That's the
do other
shift I
things.
didn't appreciate, Catryn. I thought that if I just do good work, business will come. And I didn't realize how much actual strategy is involved in like growing your business, scaling your business.
I completely agree with what you're saying. And it's the difference in looking at what are the transformational activities we're doing versus what are the transactional activities that we're doing. And the more that we can identify and separate what those are out, then we can, put some of those transactional activities to a VA or, a new team member or whatever that looks like for the business as it grows.
Exactly. And on my whiteboard right now, I have a reminder for myself that the most meaningful use of my time is talking with financial advisors because they have clients who are physicians. I work with them, help them make more money. And then how do I use my time to spend it in ways that get closer to revenue? And so everything that I'm thinking about now is in the context of what can I create a process around and give to my VA? What can I automate and what can and delegate? And then ideally, like you said, my time can be spent talking to financial advisors because that's how I generate revenue for the business.
So let's walk through what that would look like. So for any financial advisor listening, what would they expect to work with you and how does that relationship work?
Yeah, it's actually been kind of a hand in glove situation with financial advisors because just like me, they work with doctors and they're extremely close with them. If you look at their relationship, they talk about deepest, darkest depths of their finances. And so the work that I do, the way that I partner with financial advisors is by helping their doctors make more money. In many cases, financial advisors are compensated by the assets that they have under management. And so I help them help their clients have more assets to manage. So when I help doctors make more money, sell a physician practice, get a salary raise, they bring that back to the financial advisor and say, what do I do with this? And similarly, like when I negotiate salary raises for doctors, the first thing that I do is send them to a financial advisor because, as I mentioned, my skill sets very narrow. And so I want to get doctors to financial advisors who can help them figure out what to do with all this newfound money.
That makes a lot of sense. And so if you don't mind me asking, what does your payment structure, like how have you set this up for you to make money?
I think this is the coolest thing about the business and the most distinguishable way that we operate from an attorney. So attorneys get paid by the hour, billable hours and all that. I don't get paid hourly. I don't do any hourly work. So my compensation is based on the doctor's compensation. So like we talked about, I really just co-opted the sports agency model and layered it over healthcare with doctors. And so the way that I get paid is as a percentage of the doctor's salary. First, the reason for that is so that the doctor doesn't question what my motivation is. I am motivated to help my doctors make more money, full stop. And then secondarily, we negotiate that into the physician signing bonus. So that way the doctor doesn't have to worry about, well, how am I going to pay for this? Cool, we got you. We're going to negotiate into your contract. And that way the hospital is going to cover it so you don't have to worry about it. And again, we know how to do that because we spent 15 years working in hospital and health systems.
So all the ins and outs and, unlike like where the bodies are buried, where the money is buried.
Exactly. Actually, I had a doctor in one of my recent negotiations. She was asking for a salary raise and she's like, but Ethan, where's the money going to come from? And I was like, that's not your problem. That's their problem to figure out.
That's why they hire you.
You're spot on, Catryn. You're spot on.
Oh my goodness, Ethan. Well, thank you so much for being here and for letting people know that this is a service that is available out there. I can almost see this cropping up for other kinds of types of businesses. I think you're really tapping into something new and different. I mean, gosh, if I could have found someone like you to do this for me when I was an engineer, because I didn't know how to negotiate. Be like, yeah, that sounds good. Thanks. Thanks for paying me. I'm really glad.
I need money to live. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, Catryn, my first job, I didn't negotiate. So I know, like, sometimes there's this, like, well, I should have done this. It's like, no, like, it's uncomfortable for everybody. So I'm just glad to be able to have the opportunity to talk about it and help provide some guidance. So that way, if I can help, give you some confidence to go into your employer and ask for more money, awesome. I don't want you to need me. I'm, a middleman, just like a barber or a landscaper. I don't want you to need what I have to do.
But those are very necessary because I don't want to cut my own hair or cut my own grass.
Some people do. Some people do.
To each his own. And it's glad that there's so much opportunity and creativity that, new, industries can be created where sometimes we like to think like, oh, every thought that could ever be thunk has already happened, right? But
Exactly.
here you are getting this amazing idea and having the gumption and the moxie to follow it through and to see it through, because that's really the hard part, is that stick-to-itiveness and saying, yeah, it's going to be hard, but that doesn't mean I give up.
Exactly.
Well, how can the people reach out to you?
I say the best way to find us is on our socials. So on Instagram, it is at Physician Agency. And then we also have a LinkedIn page, which is just my first name and last name. So Ethan, and then last name Nkana.
Perfect. I'll also have all of this linked in the show notes so people can just easily click. But for our auditory learners, I want to make sure that I'm serving their needs as well. Thank you again so much for being here.
It's been a delight, Catryn. Thank you for having me.
And to the listeners, thank you so much for being here. This would not be possible without you, and I appreciate you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would like, subscribe, and share it with your audience. And if there is a profession, an industry, a job that you're curious about and you'd like to learn more about the inner workings, please reach out to me. I would love to find the perfect guest to talk to. Until next time, everyone, have a great day.